Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Luke Dhume, and this is a feature of the Luke Dhume Show where we go through each government topic and we break it down. Right now, we're talking about the budget, and last week we went through the budget series, and this will be episode 2 of that. And today we're going to be talking all about tariffs. Okay? So, you've heard a lot about tariffs in the news. A couple weeks ago, Trump got all of his tariffs struck down in the Supreme Court. And last year, there were a lot of volatile tariff times. And we're going to be talking all about them and why I am a major supporter of them. So, the first thing we're going to go through is kind of a timeline of the tariffs. And I got it written down here. Starting in 1789 and through the 1820s was the early republic. And those were tariffs specifically for revenue. In 1789, Tariff Act of 1789 passed by the first U.S. Congress, and the purpose was to raise revenue for the new federal government, not primarily to protect industry. Tariffs became the main source of federal income. The next era is the 1820s through the 1860s, and that is rising protectionism. Industrial states in the North wanted to protect from cheaper European goods, and the key laws would be the Tariff of 1828, called the Tariff of Abominations by the South, and the Nullification Crisis from 1832 to 1833, and that's where South Carolina tried to nullify federal tariffs. The latter reduction was the Walker Tariff in 1846, and that lowered tariffs significantly. The next era is 1861 through 1913, where you have the High Tariff Era, and that is for the protection of United States industry. And that was beginning with the Civil War. Tariffs increased sharply. The key acts were Morrill Tariff of 1861, McKinley Tariff of 1890, and Dingley Tariff of 1897. The goals were to protect American manufacturing, fund the government before income tax existed, and tariffs sometimes exceeded 40 to 50%. The next era is the shift toward lower tariffs starting in 1913, and the major turning point was the Underwood Tariff Act in 1913. This law reduced tariffs significantly and introduced the federal income tax after the ratification of the 16th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The next era is the return to protectionism. During the Great Depression, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in 1930 was passed. This law raised tariffs on 20,000 plus imports and triggered retaliatory tariffs from other countries. Many economists believe it worsened global trade during the Great Depression. In 1934 to 1970s, that is the next era and is the shift toward global free trade. And the major policy reversal was the Reciprocal Trade Agreement Acts of 1934. This law allowed the president to negotiate tariff reductions with other countries. After World War II, the creation of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade in 1947 was enacted, and the gradual global tariff reductions ensued. And then you have the 1990s through the 2000s, and that's the modern free trade era. The major agreements were the North American Free Trade Agreement of 1994, the World Trade Organization creation in 1995, and the permanent normal trade relations with China starting in 2000. Tariffs in the U.S. dropped to some of the lowest levels in history at that time. 2018 to present was kind of a renewed tariff use from the recent administrations, and some examples are China and the United States trade war, which started in 2018 and has gone to the present day. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and Chinese goods under Donald Trump, and many of the tariffs were kept by Joe Biden. So going all the way back to the creation of the United States with the first Congress, tariffs are no new thing under the sun, and especially in the United States. And that's actually one of the first reasons why I am in support of tariffs in general. Okay, and some of the first stuff I have is from the Federalist Papers. This is from an excerpt from Federalist 12, written by Alexander Hamilton. I'm going to read a few lines from it. It says, "The prosperity of commerce is now perceived and acknowledged by all enlightened statesmen to be the most useful as well as the most productive source of national wealth, and has accordingly become a primary object of their political cares. And then in the next paragraph, he says the ability of a country to pay taxes must always be proportioned in a great degree to the quantity of money in circulation and to the clarity with which it circulates. And then he goes on a few paragraphs later and says, it is evident from the state of the country and from the habits of the people, from the experience we have had on the point itself, that it is impracticable to raise any very considerable sums by direct taxation. Direct taxation would be taxes directly on the American people by income or by sales that they're buying. And he goes on to say, no person acquainted with what happens in other countries will be surprised at this circumstance. He's talking in context at the time when in reference to Great Britain in this paragraph. He says, in so opulent a nation as that of Britain, where direct taxes from superior wealth must be more tolerable and from the vigor of government much more practicable than in America. Far the greatest part of the national revenue is derived from taxes of the indirect kind, from imposts and from excises, duties on imported articles from a large branch of this latter description. So he's basically saying stuff that goes in and out of the country is what most taxes and what most revenue is for the state is derived from. So the next part that I have is where he says that a nation cannot exist without revenues, and destitute of this essential support, it must resign its independence and sink into the degraded condition of a province. This is an extremity to which no government of choice accede. Revenue, therefore, must be had at all events. And he goes on to say, thus we shall not even have the consolations of a full treasury to atone for the oppression of that valuable class of the citizens who are employed in the cultivation of the soil. But public and private distress will keep pace with each other in gloomy concert and unite in deploring the infatuation of those councils which led to disunion. So, of course, I got to mention that when Hamilton was writing this is, from Federalist 12, there wasn't a good way to collect a lot of income taxes or sales taxes in the United States because they didn't have the technology or the personnel to do it. But he said, even in that case, it is hard to, collect taxes, especially from a people who just got done fighting a war over taxes. So indirect taxes are much more optimal for the United States at that time. And I tend to agree. And the thing about it, the main reason that I'm bringing this up is because this is no new idea for the United States. And it was optimal then. And I think that it is optimal now if it can be done. The next reason is for the revenues and the taxes are a major burden on the people. So if we go to, the revenues collected in the United States from customs and duties, which, are more or less tariffs, $195 billion were collected in fiscal year 2025. Okay? So, and that is compared to, individual income taxes with $2.7 trillion. So, a drop in the bucket compared to individual income taxes. And I think that is honestly a travesty because if you look at the timeline that I just brought up to you, the income tax wasn't even established, and it wasn't even, the federal government wasn't even able to do that until 1913, okay? And before that, the government was fully funded by tariffs on imports and excises. So the next reason after that, bringing down the burden on the people because of the income taxes, the next reason would be to bring jobs home. And that is because if it costs more money to bring stuff in than it does to make stuff at home, then American labor will be optimized over foreign labor. Like if I'm going to make a t-shirt and it costs more to bring the t-shirt in and pay the people in a different country to make the t-shirt than it does to pay an American to make the t-shirt, then I'm going to make my t-shirts in America. You know what I'm saying? So basically what I'm saying is I want more Americans to have jobs instead of nationals from different countries. You know what I'm saying? So basically, the more it costs to bring the stuff in after they make it in a different country, the more apt businesses are going to be to have their product made in the United States. And that'll create more jobs for Americans. Next is the ability to use them in economic deals. And you saw Trump do this all over 2025 and some in early 2026. Like if somebody wasn't doing something that he wanted, whether that be militarily or economically, he'd say, hey, I'm going to give you like a 25% tariff. And then the complete capitulation by other countries. They'd be like, okay, because they realize that, 360 million Americans, we are the largest consumer base in the entire world. Okay, because, we're probably the richest country. And we have a lot of people who want a lot of things a lot of times. Okay, and they like to buy stuff. Okay. So if another country or another business is going to be having to ship stuff in and they're going to have to pay a lot to reach our customer base, then they're going to probably do what we want and do what like the government wants them to do. Okay. And that really puts the Americans first, especially if we're talking about a government that is doing things to help the people in that case. And next is for more opportunities in capitalisms. So if you have mega corporations, okay, big, huge entities that can make all their products overseas and then ship them to the United States to sell them, and it's all cheap, it's all free, okay, to bring them into the United States and to sell them to the people and to make them in other places, which is really cheap, then that, pushes down like the smaller businesses who, can't afford the oil to ship it over or can't afford like the shipping cost to bring it back over. And it makes it a lot harder for, companies that are based in the United States already to rise up through the ranks of capitalism, okay? And that creates mega oligarchies, okay? And that's not what we want. We want a volatile market where innovative companies that learn how to make it cheaper in the United States, make a better product for cheaper in the United States, are able to rise up and become a larger company as opposed to a mega corporation that makes all their stuff in China and then ships it over here, okay? And also, something that I didn't even write down, but it just comes to my mind now, is that, it's like more humanitarianly friendly. You know what I mean? Like, if all the shoes and t-shirts and everything else, if all that stuff is being made in a different country, or the cobalt mines for the iPhone that I'm even filming this video on right now, those people are getting paid like pennies on the hour, okay? It's literally like almost slavery, borderline, and it's terrible. You know what I mean? Like, and if people are, if like companies are being pushed to make their stuff and produce it in the United States, we have labor laws here, okay? Americans want paid, and if like you tariff the companies and force them to make it in the United States, then Americans get paid. The sweatshops aren't, cranking out t-shirts all the time and enslaving people. People aren't grinding their fingers to the bone in the cobalt mines in Kazakhstan. And everybody is more well off that way. I mean, I guess they want it because like they want a job at the end of the day. But honestly, if it's terrible conditions, like that's kind of not something you want to have on your hands. You know what I'm saying? So like if you increase the tariffs, and it's going to bring the jobs home. And a lot of people are like I heard somebody was talking about, they're like, Trump's raising all these tariffs and he's trying to bring the jobs back home, but it's not a manufacturing, nation anymore. Why not? Okay. Why aren't we making steel here? Why aren't we making cars here? Okay. As far as I know, that's a lot more jobs that Americans could have and a lot more factories that could open up if, we kind of twist the arm of the corporations and made them come back here and give us jobs, give us higher paying jobs. And, I think that would help the economy of the United States because, money would flow more freely. More people are making money. More people are able to spend money. And, there's more money in the pockets of the American people. And those are like the 4 or 5, actually 6 major reasons why I'm in support of tariffs. Again, it's no new issue. It's no new thing. The United States has been doing this all up until like the past 20 or 30 years. Okay. So it's been a huge thing for the United States to make money without cracking the whip on the backs and taxing all of the American people. I'd like to see, a baseline tariff on all imports and exports, and then more or less on different products or different countries or different companies. You know what I mean? It'd be a lot more money that the United States makes, and eventually a lot less burden on the American taxpayer. And also something that we covered last week in the show, it's, would help to balance our budget and start to bring down our national debt. Because like I said last week, we have over a $90 billion interest on the debt payment that we have to make every year. And that's not going away unless we do something about it. And I think one of the best ways to do something about it would be for the tariffs, to implement them more widespread and more organized. I don't think it was done very well last year. I'll just put that out there. It could have been a lot more organized and a lot more concrete and a lot more structured. There could have been a lot better plan to go against and be like, hey, I'm going to give you 50% tariffs, and then actually, no, I'm not. Or and then all of the laws get struck down in the Supreme Court because they're actually not in the presidential power. We need to get these bills through Congress, and that's what I'm trying to do. Remember that I'm running for the United States Congress in 2030. Dhume 2030. Okay, we need to put power back in the hands of the American people, and in this case, we need to put money back in the pockets of the American people. Again, so make sure you check out my weekly video. I'm about to film it right now. It is I'm going to be talking about the war in Iran and how that's going on right now. And that should have released around last Friday or Saturday. This should release, during the middle of the week. The next following week. Right now it is March 5th, 6th. It's past midnight, so. But anyways, make sure you check that out. Dhume 2030. Don't forget, we're going to take our country back. We're going to fight, and we're not going to stop, and we're going to win. We're going to win. Excuse me. All glory to the Most High, to Jesus Christ. Give your life to Him. It's the good life, I promise. Okay? All right, so everybody have a great rest of your day, and Dhume 2030.